The look on my daughter's face when she threatened to call the police on her own father is something I'll never forget. After 42 years of unconditional love, endless financial support, and always being there for her, Lauren stood in her kitchen, a kitchen I paid for, and screamed at me to get out of her house. The irony? It wasn't her house at all. It was mine. Every brick, every tile, every mortgage payment for the last 7 years came from my retirement fund. Lauren just didn't know it yet. So, when she screamed, "Call the cops," I simply smiled, picked up my coat, and walked out the door. 2 hours later, sitting in a quiet café on Michigan Avenue, I sent her husband the eviction notice that would change everything. Lauren had 30 days to vacate the property or face legal consequences. The text messages started flooding in within minutes. But by then, it was already too late. The trap I'd spent 3 years carefully setting had finally closed. I'm Richard Calloway, 67 years old, retired financial advisor with 38 years in the industry and a net worth of $3.4 million. That I'd built from nothing. My wife Diana passed away from breast cancer 9 years ago, leaving me to navigate my relationship with our only child alone. Lauren was always Diana's project more than mine. While I worked 60-hour weeks building our financial security, Diana handled the parenting. Maybe that was my first mistake. When Lauren graduated from Northwestern with her marketing degree in 2005, Diana and I had already paid $178,000 for her education. No student loans, no debt. A completely free start in life that neither Diana nor I had been fortunate enough to have. Our parents had been working class people who couldn't afford to help with college. We'd both worked multiple jobs to put ourselves through school, but Lauren would have it different. That was our gift to her dot she met Thomas during her senior year. He was studying law, came from a good family in Connecticut, and seemed ambitious enough. When they married in 2008, Diana and I gave them $85, $0 for a down payment on their first condo in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood. It was meant to be a starter home, something to build equity, while Thomas established his law career and Lauren climbed the marketing ladder at the advertising firm where she'd landed an entry-level position. But Thomas's law career never quite took off. He passed the bar exam on his third attempt, then bounced between small firms, never making partner, never establishing the lucrative practice he talked about during those early family dinners. And Lauren's marketing career stalled at middle management. Her salary peaked at $89,000. Respectable, but not enough for the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. Diana's cancer diagnosis came in 2014, 18 months of treatments, remissions, recurrence, and finally, acceptance. I spent $287,000 on experimental treatments not covered by insurance. Flew her to specialists in 3 different countries, and still lost her on a rainy Tuesday morning in October 2016. The doctor said she went peacefully, but I know better. Diana fought until her last breath, not for herself, but for me and Lauren. After the funeral, I threw myself into my financial practice, working longer hours, taking on more clients, anything to fill the silence of our empty house. Lauren and Thomas visited occasionally, always with some financial emergency that needed addressing. Thomas's car needed replacing $30,000. Lauren's company was downsizing, and she needed a cushion just in case, $15,000. They wanted to renovate their kitchen, $48,000. I never said no. These weren't loans in my mind. They were investments in my daughter's happiness. Diana would have wanted that. In 2018, I decided to retire. 38 years in financial planning had left me with a healthy portfolio, a paid-off house in Chicago's North Shore, and more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I was looking forward to traveling, maybe doing some consulting, possibly even dating again, though that thought came with equal measures of guilt and anxiety. That's when Lauren and Thomas approached me with the opportunity. They'd found their dream house in Winnetka, a 5-bedroom Tudor-style home with a pool and enough space for the grandchildren they promised were in my near future. The asking price was $1.2 million, well beyond what they could afford on their combined income. Would I consider helping with the down payment? I counteroffered. Instead of just the down payment, I would purchase the house outright, placing it in an LLC that would eventually transfer to Lauren upon my death. In the meantime, it could live there rent-free, just covering the property taxes and maintenance. It seemed like the perfect solution. Lauren and Thomas would have their dream home, would have a solid investment, and everyone would win. Dad, that's incredibly generous, Lauren said, hugging me tightly. But we want to do this ourselves. Just help with the down payment, and we'll handle the mortgage. We need to feel like adults. I respected that. So I wrote them a check for $240,000, representing a 20% down payment. What Lauren didn't know was that I also contacted the seller directly and arranged a side deal. I would provide the remaining $960,000 through my LLC, effectively becoming the true owner of the property while letting Lauren and Thomas believe they were making the mortgage payments. In reality, were paying me a fraction of the property's real cost, an arrangement that gave them the psychological satisfaction of homeownership while protecting my investment. The transaction was completed in March 2019. Lauren and Thomas moved into their dream home, believing they had a conventional mortgage with Midwest Mutual Bank. In reality, Midwest Mutual was simply servicing the loan on behalf of Callaway Family LLC, the entity I created to hold the property. My financial advisor's instinct for documentation meant every detail was perfectly legal, notarized, and binding. Lauren's name appeared nowhere on the actual deed. The first signs of trouble began around Christmas 2019. Lauren and Thomas hosted the family holiday party, inviting Thomas's parents from Connecticut, his sister and her husband from Boston, and several of their closest friends. I arrived early to help with preparations, carrying a briefcase full of financial documents I wanted to discuss with Lauren, estate planning, matters that I felt couldn't wait any longer. Dad, not today, Lauren said, taking the briefcase and placing it in a closet. This is a celebration, not a business meeting. Lauren, these are important matters we need to discuss. I'm not getting any younger, and this is Christmas, she interrupted. Can't you just be a normal father for one day instead of the financial advisor? That stung. I had always been both, but apparently in Lauren's mind, the roles were mutually exclusive. I let it go, helping with the turkey and making small talk with Thomas's father, a retired surgeon who spent most of the evening talking about his golf handicap and the tax burden of maintaining homes in Connecticut and Palm Beach. As the evening progressed, I noticed something curious. Lauren was introducing me not as her father, the retired financial advisor, but simply as Richard. No explanation of our relationship. No proud daughter moment. Just this is Richard, as if I were merely an acquaintance, not the man who had given her life and, more recently, a $1.2 million house. Later, when Thomas's mother asked how they had afforded such a lovely home so early in their careers, Lauren smiled and said, Thomas made partner last year. We've been very fortunate. I nearly choked on my eggnog. Thomas hadn't made partner. He had been passed over twice and was currently considering a lateral move to a less prestigious firm. and their fortune was currently sitting in the corner, feeling increasingly invisible. I didn't confront her that night. Diana always said I avoided conflict to a fault, and she was right. Instead, I made a mental note and continued observing. By the end of the evening, the pattern was unmistakable. Lauren was embarrassed by me, or at least by the reality of how much she depended on me financially. She had crafted a narrative for her in-laws and friends that didn't include her father's generosity. In her story, success was entirely self-made. The next warning sign came in February 2020, just as the pandemic was beginning to make headlines. Lauren called to ask if I would consider gifting them $50,000 for a home office renovation, with both of them potentially working from home for the foreseeable future. They needed more suitable spaces. I'm happy to help, I said, but I'd like to discuss it in person. Maybe review your overall financial situation at the same time. Dad, we don't need financial advice, Lauren said, her voice taking on the edge it always did when she felt I was overstepping. We just need the renovation money. Can you wire it this week? Lauren, it's a significant amount. I'd feel more comfortable? Dad, this is my house and my life. I'm not asking for permission to renovate. I'm just asking for the gift you've always promised would be there when we needed it. I had never made such a promise, but arguing seemed pointless. Let me think about it, I said. I'll call you next week. He hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, I received a text message. Forget I asked. Thomas and I will figure it out ourselves. It was the silent treatment I'd seen since she was a teenager, designed to make me feel guilty until I capitulated. It had always worked before. But something was different now. Diana wasn't here to smooth things over, to explain Lauren's perspective, to remind me that parenting adults is as much about letting go as it is about providing. Without Diana's mediation, the dynamic between Lauren and me had shifted into something increasingly transactional. I was becoming an ATM rather than a father. Still, I wired the $50,000 the following Monday. Old habits die hard. Throughout 2020 and into 2021, as the pandemic reshuffled everyone's lives, my relationship with Lauren became increasingly strained. Our Sunday phone calls grew shorter and less frequent. My invitations to socially distanced outdoor dinners were met with excuses about busy schedules and COVID concerns. When we did speak, Lauren steered conversations away from anything financial, despite the fact that I had wired them an additional $38, zero during that period for various emergencies. In June 2021, I decided to drop by unannounced, something I rarely did out of respect for their privacy. But I was worried. Lauren had stopped responding to my texts, and our last 3 scheduled calls had been canceled at the last minute. As I pulled into their driveway, my driveway, technically, I noticed 3 luxury cars parked outside, Lauren and Thomas's vehicles, plus a brand new Tesla Model S that I didn't recognize. I rang the doorbell, hearing laughter and music from inside. After a long pause, Thomas opened the door, his expression shifting from welcoming to concerned when he saw me. Richard, we weren't expecting you. I was in the neighborhood, I said. The age-old parental lie. Thought I'd stop by and see how you both are doing. Now's not really the best time, Thomas said, blocking the doorway slightly. We have friends over. From inside, I heard Lauren's voice. Who is it? Honey, it's your father. Thomas called back, his tone carrying a warning. There was a pause, then the sound of approaching footsteps. Lauren appeared beside Thomas, a wine glass in her hand, her expression unreadable. Dad, this is a surprise, a good one, I hope, I said, trying to keep my tone light. They're hosting a dinner party, she said. The Richardsons and the Blakes. You remember from Christmas? I didn't remember, but I nodded anyway. I won't intrude. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. You haven't been returning my calls. We've been busy, Lauren said, not quite meeting my eyes. Thomas has a big case, and I'm up for a promotion. That's wonderful news, I said. Both of you. We should celebrate. We are, Thomas said, gesturing vaguely toward the interior of the house. Right now. Actually, I see, I said. Well, I won't keep you. Maybe we can have dinner next week. Sure, Dad, Lauren said, already beginning to close the door. I'll call you. As I walked back to my car, I heard the dinner party resume. Laughter floating through the open windows. I sat in my vehicle for a moment, processing what had just happened. I had been dismissed from a gathering in a house that I owned by a daughter who couldn't be bothered to return my phone calls. Despite accepting tens of thousands of dollars from me just months earlier, for the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge a painful truth. Lauren was ashamed of me, not of what I'd done or who I was, but of what I represented, her financial dependence. Her failure to achieve the success she'd projected to her social circle. In her narrative, she and Thomas were successful professionals living the upper middle class dream. In reality, we're living well beyond their means. Subsidized by a father they increasingly treated as an embarrassment. Diana would have known how to handle this. She would have found the perfect words to bridge the gap between us without confrontation or ultimatums. But Diana wasn't here, and I needed to figure this out on my own. I decided to dig deeper. My background in financial planning gave me tools and resources most parents wouldn't have. The next day, I called an old colleague who specialized in asset investigations. Michael, I need some discreet research done on my daughter and son-in-law. Nothing illegal, just a financial overview. Credit reports, property records, that sort of thing. Everything okay, Richard? Michael asked, concern in his voice. Just doing some estate planning, I said. The lie coming easier than I expected. Want to make sure everything's set up properly. 3 days later, Michael's report arrived in a sealed envelope marked confidential. What I found inside shook me to my core. Lauren and Thomas had accumulated $347,000 in credit card debt spread across 8 different cards. They had taken a second mortgage on the house. My house, fraudulently using the property as collateral for a $200 zero home equity line of credit. Their credit scores had plummeted to the low 600s, and most disturbingly, they had opened a line of credit in my name, using my social security number and financial information that Lauren had access to from our previous financial discussions. Identity theft. My own daughter had committed identity theft against me to the tune of $75,000. I sat at my kitchen table, the documents spread before me, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't just financial mismanagement or entitlement. This was criminal activity. Lauren had crossed a line I never imagined she would approach, let alone step over. My first instinct was confrontation. Drive to their house, my house, and demand an explanation. But financial investigation had taught me the value of complete information before taking action. So, instead, I continued my research. I hired a private investigator to document their lifestyle, their social activities, their spending habits. I wanted to understand the full picture before deciding how to proceed. The PI's report arrived 2 weeks later with photographs, receipts, and detailed accounts of Lauren and Thomas's activities. Weekend trips to New York, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants, shopping sprees at luxury boutiques, a country club membership they definitely couldn't afford. They were living like people earning seven figures, not the combined $160. Zero their legitimate jobs provided. But the most revealing information came from their social media accounts. Lauren had become quite the influencer in certain Chicago social circles, posting carefully curated images of their successful professional life, with captions like "hard work pays off" and "building our empire one day at a time." In one particularly galling post, she shared a photo of their backyard, writing, "So grateful for what Thomas and I have built together. Hashtag self-made, hashtag no handouts, double quotes, no handouts." The phrase echoed in my mind as I stared at a photo of a backyard I had paid for entirely, in a house that existed only because of my generosity. I spent another month gathering evidence, documenting every transaction, creating a complete financial timeline. By August 2021, I had a comprehensive picture of Lauren and Thomas's deception. They had systematically exploited my generosity, while simultaneously distancing themselves from me socially. They were embarrassed by my presence in their lives, even as they depended on my financial support to maintain the facade of success they'd constructed. Then came the incident that forced my hand. In September 2021, I received a call from Midwest Mutual Bank, the servicer of the mortgage on Lauren's house. There had been no payment for 3 consecutive months, and they were preparing to initiate foreclosure proceedings on behalf of the note holder, which, though they didn't know it, was me. I called Lauren immediately. "The bank says you're 3 months behind on mortgage payments. What's going on?" "It's just a temporary cash flow issue," Lauren said, her voice defensive. "Thomas is changing firms, and there's a gap between his compensation packages. We'll catch up next month. Lauren, you can't just skip mortgage payments. Your credit will be destroyed. Let me help. We don't need your help," she snapped. "And frankly, it's none of your business. It's our house, our mortgage. Actually," I said carefully, "it is my business. Because you gave us the down payment 5 years ago? That doesn't entitle you to monitor our finances forever. Dad, we're adults. We can handle this." I wanted to tell her the truth, that they weren't making payments on a bank mortgage at all, but on a loan from me. That the house was owned by my LLC, not by them. That every dollar they weren't paying was effectively being stolen from my retirement fund. But something held me back. Perhaps it was the growing realization that Lauren viewed my financial support not as gifts born of love, but as transactions she was entitled to. Instead, I simply said, "Keep me posted," and ended the call. That night, I made a decision. It was time to untangle myself from Lauren's financial life, even if it meant damaging our already strained relationship. I called my attorney, explained the situation, and asked him to prepare the necessary documents. "You understand what this means, Richard?" Jack Peterson had been my attorney for over 20 years and didn't pull punches. "If you call in the note, foreclose on the property, and press charges for the identity theft, you're effectively cutting ties with your daughter. I understand," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But this can't continue. She's not just taking advantage of me. She's committing fraud. And she's not even grateful for the legitimate support I've provided." Jack sighed. "I'll prepare the documents. But, Richard, consider giving her one last chance to make this right. For your sake, not hers." I agreed to Jack's suggestion. The following Sunday, I drove to Lauren's house, documents in hand, prepared to have the most difficult conversation of my life. I would lay out everything I knew, offer her a path to redemption, and hope that somewhere inside this person she'd become was still the daughter Diana and I had raised. When I arrived, Lauren was alone. Thomas was golfing with clients, she explained as she reluctantly invited me in. We sat in the kitchen my money had renovated twice now, and I placed my folder on the counter. Lauren, we need to talk about your financial situation. I began. Dad, I told you, we're handling it, she said, immediately defensive. You're 3 months behind on the mortgage. You have over $340,000 in credit card debt. You fraudulently took out a second mortgage on this property, and you committed identity theft against me to open a $75,000 line of credit. That's not handling it. That's criminal activity. Her face went pale. How do you? I'm a financial investigator. Lauren, it's what I did for 38 years. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Those are private financial matters between me and my husband, she said, her voice rising. You had no right to investigate us. I had every right. I said calmly, this house isn't yours, Lauren. It never was. What are you talking about? We've been making mortgage payments for years. To my LLC, I said, sliding the documentation across the counter. Callaway Family LLC owns this property. Your mortgage payments were going to me, not a bank. And you haven't made them in 3 months. Lauren stared at the documents, her expression shifting from shock to anger. You tricked us? You let us believe we were homeowners when really you were our landlord? What kind of father does that? The kind who wanted to give his daughter security while protecting his investment, I said. I put $1.2 million into this house, Lauren. Not just the down payment, all of it. I wanted you to feel like it was yours, to build a life here without financial pressure. But you've taken advantage of my generosity at every turn. So, what now? She demanded. You're going to throw us out of our home? It's my home, I corrected her. And no, I'm offering you a chance to make this right. Pay back the identity theft. Start making regular payments on the house. And cut up the credit cards. Live within your actual means, not the fictional lifestyle you've created. Lauren stood up, her face flushed with anger. You've always done this, held money over my head, used it to control me. Poor Lauren can't manage without Daddy's help. Well, I don't need your charity, and I certainly don't need your judgment. This is my house. I've built a life here. You can't just take it away because I'm not living the way you think I should, Lauren. I'm trying to help you. No, she shouted, slamming her hand on the counter. You're trying to control me. You're jealous that Thomas and I have a life, friends, social connections that don't include you. You're a lonely old man who can't stand that I don't need him anymore. The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. Is that really what you think? After everything I've done for you? What you've done for me? You mean to me, spying on me, tricking me about my own house, showing up with your little folder of documents like I'm one of your clients who mismanaged their $401k. You're pathetic, Dad, and I want you to leave. Now, I gathered my documents slowly, deliberately. Lauren, think carefully about what you're doing right now. I'm offering you a chance to fix this situation. There's nothing to fix except your need to control everyone around you. Get out. Get out of my house. Lauren, I said, get out. She was screaming now, tears streaming down her face. Or I swear to God, I'll call the police and have you removed. I stood up, tucking the folder under my arm. If that's really what you want, call the cops. Lauren screamed, grabbing her phone. I'm done with you controlling my life. I looked at my daughter, Diana's daughter, standing in a kitchen I had paid for, in a house I owned, threatening to have the police remove me. And in that moment, something broke inside me. Not my heart, which had been breaking slowly for years. Something else. The final thread of misplaced responsibility I felt for shielding Lauren from the consequences of her actions. Goodbye. Lauren, I said quietly, and walked out the front door. Instead of driving home. I went to a small café on Michigan Avenue that Diana and I used to frequent. I ordered a black coffee and opened my laptop. Within 20 minutes, I had logged into my attorney's secure portal, downloaded the eviction notice we had prepared just in case, and attached it to an email address to Thomas. Please find attached a formal notice to vacate the property at 1470 to Sheridan Road, Winnetka, Illinois, owned by Callaway Family, LLC. You have 30 days from receipt of this notice to remove all belongings and surrender the premises. A formal copy will be delivered by courier tomorrow morning. Richard Callaway. I hit send at exactly for 17 p.m. Why, for 19 p.m. My phone was ringing. Lauren. I declined the call. Another call. Thomas. Declined. Then the text messages started. Lauren. Dad. What the hell is this? Thomas just got an eviction notice? Lauren, you can't do this. This is our home. Thomas, Richard, there must be some misunderstanding. Please call me so we can discuss this like adults. Lauren, I'm calling Jack. This has to be a mistake. Lauren, answer your phone. This isn't funny. I silenced my phone, finished my coffee, and ordered another. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace. The decision had been made. The consequences were in motion. All that was left was to see it through. I stayed at the café for another hour, then checked into a hotel downtown. I needed space to think, to plan my next steps away from the familiar surroundings of my North Shore home. I called Jack from the hotel room. It's done, I told him. I sent the eviction notice to Thomas's email, and I assume the courier will deliver the hard copy tomorrow, as planned. How did Lauren take it? Jack asked about how you'd expect. Threats, accusations, demands, and how are you holding up? I considered the question carefully. Surprisingly okay. It needed to be done. What about the identity theft charges? Still want to proceed? Yes, I said firmly. Send the documentation to the district attorney's office as we discussed. Lauren needs to understand that actions have consequences. Richard, that could mean criminal charges. Jail time, I'm aware. Proceed as planned. I slept surprisingly well that night, better than I had in months. The next morning, I woke to 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. Lauren, Thomas, even Thomas's parents had tried to reach me. I ignored them all, had breakfast sent to my room, and spent the morning making arrangements for what would come next at noon. I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered, Mr. Callaway? This is Detective Wilson from the Winnetka Police Department. I'm calling about a complaint we've received from your daughter, Lauren Harper. She claims you're attempting to illegally evict her from her home. She's provided mortgage documents showing that she and her husband are the legal owners of the property. Those documents are fraudulent, Detective. I have the actual deed and all associated paperwork showing that Callaway Family LLC owns the property outright. I've already filed a formal complaint regarding several financial crimes committed by my daughter and son-in-law, including identity theft and fraud. My attorney can provide you with all the necessary documentation. There was a pause on the line. I see. This sounds like a civil matter rather than criminal, Mr. Callaway. But I would suggest you contact your daughter. She seems distraught. I appreciate your concern, Detective, but I think it's best if all communication goes through our respective attorneys at this point. After hanging up, I called Jack again. The police contacted me. Lauren's trying to claim the eviction is illegal. Jack's side. I was afraid of this. Don't worry, I've already couriered all the documentation to the Winnetka PD. They'll see that everything is in order. But, Richard, are you sure you want to go through with this? Once certain wheels are set in motion, I'm sure, I said firmly. It's time Lauren learned that she can't manipulate her way out of everything. The next week passed in a blur of legal communications, formal complaints, and increasingly desperate messages from Lauren and Thomas. I remained at the downtown hotel, venturing out only for meals and brief walks along the lakefront. Jack kept me updated on the legal proceedings. The district attorney had opened an investigation into the identity theft. The eviction notice had been properly served and was being processed through the courts. Lauren and Thomas had hired an attorney who was frantically searching for legal loopholes that didn't exist. 10 days after sending the eviction notice, I received in a mail from Thomas, "Richard, I understand you're upset, and perhaps Lauren and I could have handled things better, but this nuclear option helps no one. Lauren is devastated. Her mother would be heartbroken to see this family torn apart over money. Can we please meet to discuss a reasonable compromise?" Thomas, the mention of Diana was a low blow, designed to trigger guilt. But Thomas was wrong. Diana wouldn't have been heartbroken over my actions. She would have been devastated by Lauren's betrayal. Diana valued honesty above all else. She would never have condoned Lauren's behavior, no matter how much she loved her daughter. I didn't respond to Thomas's email. Instead, I forwarded it to Jack with a brief note. No negotiation. Proceed as planned. On day 15, I received a call from Jack. The court has upheld the eviction notice. Lauren and Thomas have 15 days to vacate the premises. Additionally, the DA has enough evidence to bring charges on the identity theft. They're offering a plea deal, restitution, probation. No jail time if Lauren admits guilt and pays back the money immediately. Has she been informed of the plea deal? Her attorney received the offer this morning. We should hear something soon. I returned to my home in North Shore that afternoon, confident that Lauren and Thomas wouldn't try to contact me in person now. That formal legal proceedings were underway. I had just settled into my study when the doorbell rang. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Thomas, alone, looking haggard and defeated. "Richard, please." 5 minutes. I should have closed the door, but some residual sense of propriety made me step aside. 5 minutes. Thomas followed me into the living room, remained standing. "Lauren doesn't know I'm here. She'd be furious if she found out. What do you want, Thomas?" "To understand. All of this, the eviction, the criminal charges, it seems so extreme. We made mistakes, serious ones. We're family. Families forgive. Families also respect boundaries," I said calmly. "They don't commit identity theft against each other. They don't lie and manipulate and exclude." Thomas ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I know things have been strained between you and Lauren. After Diana died, Lauren struggled with how to relate to you. She felt you were overbearing, constantly checking on our finances, offering advice we didn't ask for. Overbearing," I repeated. "Is that how she characterizes someone who paid for her education, her wedding, her house, and countless emergencies over the years? It's not about the money. It's exactly about the money, Thomas. Lauren wants the benefits of my financial support without acknowledging where it comes from. She wants to pretend she's self-made while secretly relying on my generosity. And when that generosity wasn't enough, she resorted to fraud and identity theft. She made mistakes. No, mistakes are accidental. What Lauren did was deliberate and sustained. She lied to me, to your friends, even to your parents. She created a fictional life that she couldn't afford, and when reality threatened to intrude, she doubled down with criminal behavior. Thomas looked desperate. What can we do to fix this? There must be something. I considered him for a moment. Thomas had always struck me as weak-willed, more follower than leader in his marriage. But he wasn't innocent in this situation either. Lauren can accept the plea deal, pay back the $75. Zero she stole from me, and vacate my property by the court-ordered deadline. Then she can start rebuilding her life based on truth rather than lies. And our relationship? Your relationship with your only daughter? That's up to Lauren. But it would start with genuine accountability. Not just for the criminal behavior, but for the years of emotional manipulation and ingratitude. Thomas stared at the floor. She'll never agree to that. In her mind, you're the villain here. The controlling father who couldn't let go, who's now punishing her for wanting independence. Is that what you believe too, Thomas? He looked up, meeting my gaze directly for perhaps the first time in our entire relationship. No, I think Lauren has been running from financial reality for years, and you've enabled it. I'm not innocent either. I should have put my foot down, insisted we live within our means. But it was easier to accept your help, to let Lauren manage the relationship with you. I failed as a husband and as a son-in-law. His candor surprised me. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. Will it change anything? No, I said firmly. The legal proceedings will continue. But I appreciate your honesty, even at this late stage. Thomas nodded, defeated, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For all of it. So am I, Thomas. More than you know, after he left. I poured myself a glass of the Macallan 18 that Diana and I had saved for special occasions. This hardly qualified as a celebration. I needed something to steady my nerves. The confrontation with Thomas had been unexpectedly draining. 2 days later, Jack called again. Lauren has accepted the plea deal. She'll pay full restitution, serve 3 years of probation, and undergo financial counseling. The formal agreement will be signed tomorrow. And the eviction? They've agreed to vacate by the deadline. No further legal challenges. Thank you, Jack, for everything. It's my job, Richard. But for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Difficult, painful, but right. The day before Lauren and Thomas were required to vacate my property, I drove by the house. Moving trucks were parked in the driveway. Workers carried furniture and boxes to the vehicles while Lauren directed them from the front porch. She looked exhausted, diminished somehow. For a brief moment, I considered stopping, offering some word of reconciliation or closure. But the time for that hadn't arrived yet. Perhaps it never would. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where Diana was buried. I hadn't visited in several months. A fact that filled me with guilt despite the irrationality of it. Diana was gone. She didn't know whether I brought fresh flowers or spoke to her headstone. But it mattered to me. This ritual of connection to the woman who had been my partner for 37 years. I did it, Dan, I said quietly, placing roses on her grave. I finally stood up to Lauren. Not the way you would have done it. You were always better at the delicate conversations, the gentle course corrections. I went nuclear, just like you always said I would have pushed too far. The October wind rustled the trees overhead. The only response I would ever get, she's not a little girl anymore. She's a grown woman who made terrible choices. But she's still our daughter, and I still love her. I just couldn't enable the behavior anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that her actions weren't hurting me, hurting us, hurting the legacy we worked so hard to build. I sat on the small bench across from Diana's headstone, lost in thought for nearly an hour. When I finally stood to leave, I felt different, not healed. That would take much longer, if it ever happened at all, but resolved. The actions I had taken weren't about revenge or punishment, about truth and consequences. Lauren needed both, even if she couldn't see it yet. 3 months passed. Christmas came and went, the first I'd spent entirely alone since Diana's death. Lauren made no attempt to contact me. though Jack informed me that she and Thomas had moved to an apartment in Evanston, significantly downsizing their lifestyle to accommodate their reduced circumstances. The restitution payment for the identity theft, $75, 0 plus interest and penalties, had been made in full. Presumably with help from Thomas's parents. In late January, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized Lauren's handwriting immediately. I sat with the unopened envelope for several hours, uncertain whether I was ready for whatever it contained. Eventually, curiosity overcame apprehension. Dad, I've started this letter a dozen times, and I still don't know what to say. I'm sorry feels inadequate for what I've done, but I am sorry, deeply, genuinely sorry. Not just for the financial fraud, though that was inexcusable, but for the years of emotional manipulation and ingratitude, for treating you like an ATM rather than a father, for being embarrassed by you instead of proud of everything you accomplished and sacrificed. I've been doing a lot of work with my therapist, yes. I finally started therapy on why I behaved the way I did. Understanding the reasons doesn't excuse the behavior. Maybe it helps explain it. After Mom died, I was lost. She was always the bridge between us. Translating your financial concerns into emotional language I could understand, and my emotional needs into practical terms you could respond to. Without her, we were speaking different languages, and I resented you for not understanding mine. That resentment grew into something ugly. I convinced myself that your financial support was somehow compensation for emotional neglect, that I was entitled to your money because you had failed me in other ways. It was easier to paint you as the controlling villain than to acknowledge my own insecurity and fear of failure. Lifestyle Thomas and I created was a house of cards, and on some level, I always knew it would collapse. But I kept hoping for a miracle, a sudden promotion, an inheritance from Thomas's family, something that would make our fiction real before anyone discovered the truth. Instead, my choices destroyed everything: our home, our credit, our reputations, and most painfully, my relationship with you. I don't expect forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable, particularly the identity theft. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I want you to know that I'm facing reality now. Thomas and I have created a strict budget. We're both working second jobs to rebuild our savings. Our apartment is small but affordable on our actual income. For the first time in my adult life, I'm living honestly, and while it's harder in many ways, it's also freeing. Maybe someday, if you're willing, we could meet for coffee. Not to ask for anything, those days are done, but just to talk. About Mom, about life, about the weather, about anything except money. I love you, Dad. I always have, even when I was at my worst. I hope you can believe that, even if you can't forgive the rest. Lauren, I read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulation or hidden agenda. I found none. It seemed genuine. A first step toward accountability that had been noticeably absent from our relationship for years. But was it enough? Could words on paper, however heartfelt, repair the damage that had been done? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I spent the next few weeks reflecting on what I wanted from my relationship with Lauren Cohen. Forward, Diana would have advocated for reconciliation. She always believed in second chances. But Diana hadn't experienced Lauren's betrayal firsthand. She hadn't been erased from family gatherings, lied to repeatedly, stolen from, threatened with police intervention. My wounds were still raw. My trust completely shattered. In late February, I finally sent a brief email. Lauren, I received your letter. Thank you for your honesty. I need more time. I'm open to meeting eventually. Not now, but perhaps in a few months. Continue your therapy. Keep building your honest life. That matters more than any words could. Dad, spring turned to summer. I sold the Winnetka property, donating a significant portion of the proceeds to a financial literacy program for young adults. I traveled a bit. Something Diana and I had always planned to do in our retirement, but never got around to before. Her diagnosis. I visited old friends, made new ones through a photography class, and slowly began rebuilding a life that didn't revolve around Lauren's needs or my anger over her betrayal. In August, nearly a year after the eviction, I sent Lauren another email. There's a café on Michigan Avenue called Hometown Blend. Diana and I used to go there every Sunday morning. I'll be there this Sunday at 10 a.m. if you'd like to meet. Just talk as you suggested. No money discussions. I arrived early, choosing a table by the window where Diana and I had often sat. I ordered my usual black coffee and waited, unsure whether Lauren would actually show up. At 10:07, she walked through the door. She looked different. Her designer clothes replaced with simple jeans and a blouse. Her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her face free of the carefully applied makeup she'd always worn. She spotted me immediately, hesitated for just a moment, then approached the tabled Dad. She said softly, "Lauren," I replied, not rising to hug her as I might have done before. "Would you like some coffee?" "Yes, please," I signaled the waitress, and Lauren ordered a latte. We sat in awkward silence until her drink arrived. This was Mom's favorite place. She finally said, "I remember coming here with you both when I was little. She always ordered the cinnamon scones and complained about the calories while eating every crumb." I added, a small smile forming despite myself. Lauren nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I miss her every day, so do I." Another silence, less awkward this time. "How have you been?" she asked carefully. "I'm doing well. Sold the Winnetka house. Been traveling a bit. Taking a photography class." "Photography? You always said you had no artistic talent. Turns out I was wrong about that. Just needed to try." She smiled slightly. "I'd like to see your photos sometime." "Maybe," I said, not committing. "How about you and Thomas?" "We're adjusting. The apartment is small, but it's what we can afford." Thomas switched firms, took a pay cut, but regular hours. I'm still at the same company. I've picked up freelance marketing work on weekends. Between the two incomes, we're stable. Not saving much yet, but not going deeper into debt either. That's good. Honest living has its own rewards. Lauren nodded, looking down at her latte. "I've learned that the hard way." She hesitated, then continued. "I need to ask you something, and please know that I'm not asking for money or help. I just need information." I tensed slightly. "Go ahead. Did you press charges against me because you wanted me punished, or because you wanted me to learn?" I considered the question carefully. "Both, initially. I was angry, furious, really, and I wanted you to face consequences. But as time passed, I realized that what I really wanted was for you to see yourself clearly, to understand that actions have consequences, that relationships require honesty, that true independence means living within your actual means, not a fictional life subsidized by someone else's money." She nodded slowly. "I'm grateful in a strange way, not for the legal trouble or the eviction. Those were horrible, but for the wake-up call. I needed it, even though I hated you for it at the time. I didn't do it to be cruel. Lauren, I did it because nothing else had worked. You weren't hearing me. You weren't seeing yourself. I know that now." She hesitated again. "Can I ask one more thing?" "Of course. Do you think we can rebuild?" "Not the financial relationship. I don't want or expect your financial support ever again. But just father and daughter. Can we find a way back from this?" I looked at my daughter, Diana's daughter, and saw something I hadn't seen in years: honesty, vulnerability, authenticity, no manipulation, no entitlement. Just a genuine question from a person who had made terrible mistakes and was trying to find a path forward. I think so. I said finally. It won't be quick or easy. Trust takes much longer to rebuild than to break. But I'm willing to try if you are. I am. She said simply. No more lies, no more manipulation. Just truth, even when it's hard. Even when it's hard, I agreed. We spent another hour at the café, talking about safe subjects, her work, my photography, memories of Diana that made us both laugh and cry. We didn't touch on money or the past year's events again. When we parted, it was an awkward moment where neither of us knew quite how to say goodbye. A hug seemed premature, but a handshake too formal. Eventually, I simply reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. Next Sunday, I asked. Same time? I'd like that. Lauren said. I'd like that very much. As I watched her walk away, I felt a complex mix of emotions: caution, hope, lingering anger, and something that might eventually grow back into love. Diana would have approved, I think, not of the nuclear option I'd taken to get here, but of this careful first step toward reconciliation. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is allowing them to face the consequences of their actions. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no, even when every instinct tells you to rescue and protect. And sometimes healing can only begin after the painful but necessary process of accountability. Lauren and I have a long road ahead. Trust isn't rebuilt in a day or a month or even a year. But as I walked back to my car that August morning, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before Diana's death: the possibility of a future where my relationship with my daughter was based on truth rather than transaction. A future where call the cops wasn't the end of our story, but the painful beginning of a more honest one. I don't know if we'll get there, but for the first time in years, I believe it's possible. And for now, that's enough.